First things first, I want to give some credit to Finn because he had the balls to make a video that is pretty difficult to make. But just as a creator, and especially one where we find ourselves in difficult situations where certain opinions cancel your ability to work. Massive props to Finn. I feel like Finn was actually quite balanced in his approach. Joe Dirt's half-brother, Future Mike here. I did have to re-record some things, so there's gonna be some weird splices of different footage of me throughout this video, just a heads up. But having said all that, here's where I disagree with you, Finn, and less balls on my part for having to be drunk to do it.
Like Ted Cruz tweeting, "Who mixed the new Corey Taylor single? That snare sounds like." Or Kamala Harris making a 29-minute webcam rant about how gent is not a valid subgenre.
That's not a fair analogy. This may come across as nitpicking, but there's a reason why I'm picking this out, and come along with me. Someone saying that a particular album's mix sucks ass is probably true, or someone using whatever reasoning to invalidate an entire genre of music is not the same gravity that living your life is. When we're talking about politics, we're talking about how people should live their lives through an understood agreement that there's one authoritative source that, through threat of force, makes sure that these rules are lived out. Future Mike says that's referred to as the government. That's some pretty fucking heavy shit. Ted Cruz and Kamala Harris are a part of that process in a very intimate way. Them commenting on people's music, not quite the same thing.
What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock NBA, and today we're here to answer a few simple but actually
go subscribe to this
questions.
motherfucker.
Should musicians talk about politics in their music?
No.
What about social media? Or
No.
to take things even further,
No.
do they have an obligation to talk about politics?
No.
Musicians, or really anybody, should absolutely voice their opinion about whatever they want. But at the same
Okay, I definitely agree with him to an extent. As a blanket statement that anyone should be able to express themselves honestly at any time, I agree in the most fundamental level. However, as Finn will get into later into this video, there is a certain responsibility that you have to have as a public figure, knowing that people are going to take what you say with more gravity than someone else.
But at the same time, we, as the audience, should probably take their opinions with a very big grain of salt. Like if Dave Mustaine...
The largest grain of salt. Okay, I think the biggest reason why we don't take their opinions with that grain of salt that needs to be there is because there isn't enough fucking salt on the planet. Holy shit, we should not take this that seriously. And frankly, I don't even think that we do. I think that it's confirmation bias that feeds into the fact that celebrities can voice their opinions publicly. Because it's a lot less about making sure that I take care of the people who indulge in my art and who make their lives better by listening to the things that I do artistically because it's so fucking good, than it is just an ego stroking a confirmation of your own ideas and the fact that you get to express that on your platform, and then suddenly there's a bajillion fucking likes on your stupid fucking tweet. And then you get off about how important you are when someone disagrees with you, and they quote tweet it, being like, hey, this person's a massive cunt. And you're like, oh, I'm going to Uno reverse card you. You're a massive cunt. Didn't see that one coming. It's definitely not predictable in the most disgustingly indulgent way.
Wants to tell me how to play guitar? I'm listening. The dude is amazing. But if he wants to tell us how to run the healthcare system, he's probably not the guy we should be listening to. Some of you are probably saying, what a stupid question. Like, music and art have always gone hand in hand with politics and social issues. How could you even ask this?
Okay, this is unprecedented in Mike Become the Night canon. This is future Mike. Going back to what Finn was saying in that video, we ask it not because we think that musicians shouldn't talk about politics or shouldn't talk about social issues or culture. We ask it because we know the gravity that public figures have when they make these types of statements and how that relates to the culture and how their actions will inherently unite or divide people who liked their music, their art, regardless of any political perspective. Ready for confession time right here for me? I have written several political songs in my time. They are not overtly political because I happen to take a perspective that the things that I find to be true in my political perspectives are relatable to more than the people who share my same political beliefs. The underlying story is actually a lot more important than me trying to get one stupid ass motherfucker elected. It's more important to me for people to have a more accurate and frankly zen perspective of life than to have them vote the way that I need them to vote now because the election's scary. And the funny thing is, beyond all of this, politics is probably the least important thing about music. A lot of people give me shit because the last thing I listen to in music is the lyrics. And it's like, oh, they're so important. And that was like the whole meme of literally the first Mike the Music Snob video I ever did was, if you really want to be told a story, go read a fucking book, dumbass. Music has to do with the semantically ambiguous, the emotional, that thing that speaks deeper than your prefrontal cortex, that thing that communicates with that gross reptilian part of your brain. And also thinking about a parallel concept, the idea of me making a song that in my mind was political, but I stripped out the semantic portions, which would make it specifically political. But I still told the story in a way that was, one, very accurate, and also there's coded language in there, which you'll most likely never know about. And it spoke to many people who could not interpret it accurately to exactly what I was thinking, but they took something very positive from it that had the same story, the same underlying culture, philosophy, and values. That is a lot more important than getting some stupid ass motherfucker elected. Music is not about the fact that it makes political statements. It's the fact that this crazy, somehow very human, unifying phenomenon can heal us. It acts as medicine or a drug, depending upon how you abuse it. It requires no semantic information. It requires none, yet can speak to everyone universally. That's the power of music that's a lot more important than the fucking politics. The political statements would have less power without the undergirding power of music. If the most important thing to you about music is the political statements that were made, then I don't think you care that much about music. Plain and simple.
This Woody Guthrie song from the 40s called All You Fascists Bound to Lose.
Well, I'm gonna tell you fascists.
And I'm sure that made all the fascists cower in their boots. There wasn't one fascist who changed their mind from listening to that song or was enlightened by it. And if you say, oh, Mike, that's not the purpose of it, I would say, yeah, I agree. It is a rallying cry. It is a battle song to fight the fascists, to, in the end, kill them, or at very least, kill their ideology. I don't necessarily think that that is the wrong approach to take in music, but you have to keep in mind when you do it and why you do it. There are a lot more things that unify our culture as an American culture. Do you really want to put out a battle cry if you're not actually being threatened? Either way, all that's separate. Reducing the simplest interpretation of this song of like, all you fascists got to go bye-bye or whatever. Did that change anyone's minds? Did this really actually move the needle at all without violence? I'm gonna say no. And that's also why I would say Finn did not make enough distinctions between the purposes of the art of music. He's definitely coming at it from a lot more of a contemporary perspective where the semanticism of the lyrics has more bearing. That also has to do with the fact that he also is more aligned with the punk movement. God bless his fucking heart. But he doesn't examine the purposes of music and the effects of music outside of the lyricism, outside of the concrete semantic idea, outside of the intentions of the artist. What matters more is not what the artist wanted to happen, but what actually happens once the culture takes this in, absorbs it, and acts it out in their daily lives.
The music has always been a vehicle for expressing opinions about politics and social issues.
Yeah.
And although I think that a lot of what passes for quote unquote politics in music is really just somebody complaining about whatever authority figure they're mad at right now, whether that's like cops or the president or teachers, like when the entire punk scene had like a temper tantrum in the 2000s when Bush won.
In the 2000s, motherfucker. The entire genre of punk is nothing other than a capitalist-induced temper tantrum. Tell me I'm wrong.
I think it's also done a very good job of raising awareness for some specific issues. Police brutality. That's something I became aware of in 1989 when I discovered NWA. Right. Or because of hardcore bands like Earth Crisis and Vegan Reich, I get into veganism and discovered things like Sea Shepherd and the ALF and Direct Action.
I'm just picturing Nazis being vegan, and that's fucking hilarious. Oh, wait, the vegans are. I'm joking. I'm fucking joking. Just take a fucking joke for a second.
Very ahead of its time. And I would say all that is
it would help more if the song didn't suck dick. That sounded awful.
We can agree or disagree on the particulars of any of those issues, but I think generally speaking, raising awareness of things that were previously unknown or ignored is a good thing because that leads to more discussion.
I fully agree, Finn. And you know who's a fantastic example of that? System of a Down. This is one of the primary examples that gets brought up to me every time I say, politics shouldn't be talked about in fucking music, or just keep politics out of fucking music because apparently I'm just a stupid asshole who has no fucking awareness that obviously politics has been in music. System of a Down made it a huge part of their musical mission to bring awareness to the Armenian genocide. There's still tons of people today who deny the Armenian genocide. There's a shit ton of their fucking music that relates to that, and that is important. I don't think that is political inherently, and that's really what I want to bring more to the forefront here with Finn. Just because you're talking about a social issue or a historical happening does not inherently make it political. Bob Dylan wrote The Hurricane, which was about a boxer, an African-American boxer who was wrongfully arrested and jailed for a long time for a murder he did not commit. I think that Bob Dylan did something that is a very net positive to humanity and society by making that song. I think that Bob Dylan was voicing and using his platform in a very positive way. However, it was not political. It was cultural. And if you confuse politics with culture, you are a massive part of the problem. So Roger Waters saying that the education system is a brainwashing apparatus, I would say is cultural and also more philosophical because you are questioning the foundation of human education. Roger Waters using that same song or even similar type of music and plastering faces of Trump behind him while he is playing this song live is a lot more political. You are removing the ability for the audience to interpret it as they need to interpret it. And we don't have to agree upon the specific way we interpret it, but we have the ability to discuss it. We still have the emotional connection of enjoying the music, which opens the opportunity for one, a cultural unity, but two, the ability to synthesize from each other's ideas somewhere a proper middle ground, hopefully closer to the truth. You remove that when you make it political. The fact that I am going to have so many comments in this video arguing about Roger Waters and Pink Floyd and whatever song I referenced, which, I mean, take a guess, and whether or not it was or wasn't political, and everyone is going to get upset about it in the comment section, and some of them will be smooth-brained as fuck, in my opinion, means that Roger Waters did a net detriment to the culture. He did a net detriment to society. He didn't take time to try and actually understand anyone who thought differently than him. There is a high likelihood that he was deep-throating the Kool-Aid really fucking hard. That common thread, which can heal and synthesize, suddenly was broken because you're a fucking asshole. Either that or you're a short-sighted prick. Take your pick.
That leads to more discussion, which then hopefully leads to a solution. So if all that is so great, why am I bringing this up? Why am I making? Is that musicians and entertainers have a very bad habit of, to put it bluntly, talking out of their ass about stuff that they're just wildly unqualified to speak on, especially in regards.
Even if they're qualified to speak on it, which is a best case scenario, we as public figures need to consider how our words are going to affect people, how our words are going to affect the culture. It's one thing to stoke discussion and try and bring a conflict that becomes a synthesis through conversation. That is a beautiful thing. It is another thing to inject yourself into what is an obviously obscured conversation. And I think that outside of the extremes of either side of this, there is a recognized obscured conversation that most of us want to untangle and discover. Damn it. And you don't help anyone by castigating and, in effect, damning the other side. Trust me, I enjoy my fair share of shit giving, but at the same point, I do not write them off as stupid. I do not write them off as evil. I do not write them off as not human. When you as a public figure put yourself in that position where that is what you're saying, this side is evil, this side is stupid, this side is just purely ignorant, then suddenly you become a divisive personality.
And do we really need more of that right now? Like, is that actually going to help anyone or anything? I don't think so. And just so you don't think I'm taking sides here, I would say the same thing about the new 5-Finger Death Punch video where they're making fun of Nancy Pelosi and like mask scolds.
The fact that wearing a mask is a blue team bad thing to me is very indicative of how fucking awful our current discourse is. People on both sides are so afraid of having their perceived human rights violated because of tribalism. And yeah, I've had a number of people ask me, oh yeah, do a reaction to the 5-Finger Death Punch music video and tell us what you think about it. I didn't watch it, and I'm not going to watch it because I saw the headlines from Loudwire. That video I did not feel was helpful at all. Who changed their minds about masks because you decided that wearing a mask was the same as being a part of the Communist Party? If you changed your mind and thought that wearing a mask was being a part of the Communist Party because you watched the 5-Finger Death Punch video, please let me know in the comments below. Only serious inquiries. Who did that help? Who did it divide? That's the bigger question.
Colin Kaepernick, who I think is a good guy, who has his heart in the right place. I think he's just kind of an uneducated person who's in over his head. And he made the unfortunate mistake of endorsing Fidel Castro. But I think it actually ended up being good in some ways because it made a lot of historians and Cubans come out and be like, actually, Castro is a horrible, oppressive dictator.
What a shock! Awful. Almost like Colin Kaepernick has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. What a surprise. Almost like a person whose profession was to hire someone else to make sure his grades were good through college so that he could have an NFL career doesn't have the academic acumen to analyze history or politics or barely a fucking pass read. Colin Kaepernick sucks as a quarterback.
I would encourage musicians or, really anybody to think twice before just blurting stuff out.
3 times, 4 times.
Your words and actions carry a lot of weight with your audience.
It's our fucking money, not yours. We pay that in taxes for everything we do.
That guy looks like an asshole.
By the same token, I think it's on us as the fans to use a little bit more critical thinking. First of all, consider the source.
Yeah, Finn, I actually really agree with you. I think that not just fans, but just people in general who absorb all of this political information should think more critically. I am not absolving myself from this statement. But regardless of how much we try to train our minds, there will be people who will use the information given to us to justify our own points of view. And that's something, again, that a public figure needs to consider as the larger picture of when they decide to make a statement.
Musicians, generally speaking, are honestly not super educated people. We hold up Tom Morello as an example.
I disagree with musicians not being super educated people. It just really depends upon what they're educated in and how you define education. And he's about to talk about Tom Morello, which I definitely would love to avoid this. Future Mike here. I don't want to avoid this. I have found it to be an indeterminate degree because he says he is a poli-sci grad, whether that means that he actually graduated with an undergrad degree. My first thought was that he has a graduate degree in poli-sci. Either way, a pathetic degree to get. Learning poli-science is like going and majoring in college for home ec. So you couldn't go full bore and just learn how to work in a restaurant as like an actual chef. And yeah, Rage Against the Machine made some things that brought some social issues to the forefront and to the light. Good on them. I'm so fucking proud of you. You are obviously so important, which is why Tom Morello won't shut the fuck up on social media. And every time there is anything to do with Trump or Black Lives Matter, it is him posting pictures of something to do with Trump or Black Lives Matter. And then you swipe a few times and it's pictures of him on stage playing with Rage Against the Machine, as if this is supposed to be some type of substantive counterpoint, as if him playing on stage is a literal counterpoint to what he perceives as actual fascism. Dude, even if we actually lived in a country where literal Hitler was in charge of our country, and you posted that on social media of like pictures of the Holocaust versus you playing on stage like you actually did something by playing music on stage, you're a fucking cunt. You are a self-righteous prick. Chill the fuck out. Slow your roll, you dumbass.
Education or a lot of professional experience to have a valid opinion on something? No, absolutely not. And I think that's especially true when it comes to politics, because that would mean that only politicians are allowed to talk about politics, and fuck that, because fuck politicians.
Finn, pour yourself a glass of whiskey really quick. I'll wait. Pause the video. Okay, now that you're back, here's to you, you motherfucker. Fuck politicians. Fuck politicians.
Can't rant about how gent is not a valid subgenre. Now it's possible.
It's a valid subgenre. It's just a really fucking boring one.
Pop punk, and it's possible that your favorite musician is actually super knowledgeable about the nuances of the federal defense budget. But I'd say that both of those things are pretty unlikely, and you should keep that in mind when they're talking.
All those morons saying that communism is the same as welfare. You can go leave.
And lastly, I think on balance, it's actually better to say nothing at all than to just spout off a bunch of loudmouth, poorly informed, angry rants. And
okay, yeah, obviously, if you're not that informed, in quotes, which I mean is also up for debate of whether or not someone is or isn't informed, or whether both sides are and aren't at the same time, and you are just with no apprehension spouting off online a bunch of dumb shit that you cannot prove, that you have no evidence of, I agree that is dumb, and please do not do that. However, at the same time, let's pretend that the person who is quote unquote uninformed is actually in the minority and is informed with something that is true that no one else acknowledges. Should they be able to speak out then, even if it sounds crazy? It's a difficult question. And I think that's something that Finn also wants to think about, but did not include into his video. It's a very complicated subject. And on top of that, given our current cultural climate, I would say keep it to your stupid fucking self. If you are a part of making the art that actually unifies us all, that we can all appreciate, why in the fucking world would you take the opportunity to divide us as opposed to unite us? Why in the world would you want to suppose that yours is the best way of thinking? Unless you actually have no concept that there's a lot of people who don't think the way that you do, or that you have no idea how to reach someone else who happens to come to separate conclusions than you. You are the ivory tower, and your own head is far up it. That means I'm telling you your head is up your own ass. We are not that different. None of us are. If you live in a Western country, we're not that different. Even if you don't live in a Western country, there's still a lot that we can agree upon. There's a lot of fundamental human experience that we can all agree upon. That is why I say keep politics out of music, because the things that undergird your political decisions are philosophy, culture, societal things, and psychological aspects, a lot of which we do agree upon, surprisingly. And you do better to make less assumptions about people who subscribe to a different political perspective than you. I don't know. Fucking talk to them. Try and understand to think why they think. We have the opportunity as artists to bring people together who think very differently on a surface level, to understand that they have a unifying factor at a much deeper level. And if you want to get rid of that, that's on you. But I think you're a piece of shit. And I think that there is something much more integral to the entirety of humanity than Trump and Biden. And if you don't think so, you're a fucking idiot. You are a fucking idiot. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. And if I don't, fuck you.